Look, most people wake up in the morning and immediately start doing things that are literally shortening their lives. They check their phone, they skip breakfast, they rush straight into work mode without giving their body what it actually needs to function properly. And here's the thing, there's one morning habit that the world's leading longevity researchers swear by, but when I tell people what this is, they think I've lost my mind. It involves cold. It's deeply uncomfortable. And it flies in the face of everything we've ever been told about starting your day gently. But I'm going to try and tell you why this controversial practice, along with 4 other science-backed morning habits, could genuinely add years to your life. I'm Dr. Alex. I'm an emergency medicine doctor, and after nearly 10 years in the A&E, I've seen what happens when preventable disease isn't prevented. And so my goal now is to help people avoid it in the first place and live longer, healthier lives. Now, before we dive into these specific habits, I need you to understand something fundamental. The relationship between your morning routine and your longevity isn't some wellness industry myth. Your body operates on circadian rhythms, these internal biological clocks that regulate everything from your hormone production to your cellular repair processes. And when you align your morning habits with these rhythms, you're essentially speaking your body's language. You're telling it when to be alert, when to repair damage, when to produce energy. If you miss these signals, then you're fighting against millions of years of evolution. If you get them right, and you're stacking the deck in your favor of a longer, healthier life. So everything I'm about to share with you is working with your biology, not against it. And look, if you're watching this video, then the chances are you're worried about your health. So I want to take a few seconds here to make you a promise. I promise to keep creating the most helpful videos I possibly can, grounded in science and the latest research, to help you live longer, to help you prevent the diseases that I see in the emergency department every single day. And all I ask in return is that you give this fairly new channel a chance and hit the subscribe button. Now, if you get to the end of the video and you didn't think it was worth your time or you've not learned something new, then feel free to unsubscribe. No hard feelings, but if you give me your time and your attention, I'll give you everything I've learned from over a decade in medicine. So please help me out, hit the subscribe button to help this channel reach more people like you, and let's get on with the video. So let's start with the habit that makes most people recoil, and this is deliberate cold exposure. And I'm not talking about a slightly cold shower here. Now, I know what you're thinking. Alex, you want me to jump into freezing water first thing in the morning? Have you lost your mind? But here's what changed my mind about this. The research here goes way beyond just waking you up. When you expose your body to cold water, ideally around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius for anywhere between 2 to 11 minutes, you trigger a cascade of physiological responses that researchers have linked to increased longevity. And the mechanism behind this is really fascinating. You see, your body perceives cold as a mild stressor. Now, yes, that might sound a bit negative, but this is where something called hormesis comes in. It's this biological principle where small amounts of stress actually make your system stronger. Think of it like exercising a muscle. You're creating a small amount of controlled damage that your body then overcompensates for. The cold triggers your sympathetic nervous system, causing this massive release of noradrenaline. We're seeing increases of 200 to 300% in some studies. And this isn't just about feeling alert, though you will definitely feel alert after this. Noradrenaline has been shown to reduce inflammation in the body, and here's why that matters for longevity. Chronic inflammation is one of the primary drivers of age-related diseases. We're talking about cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, type 2 diabetes, and even most cancers. So by regularly exposing yourself to cold, you're essentially training your body to manage inflammation more effectively. But what really caught my attention when I was diving into the longevity research was the work on cold shock proteins. These are molecules that your body produces in response to cold exposure, and they appear to protect your cells from damage. One particular protein called RBM3 has been linked to improved brain health and may even help prevent neurodegeneration. In animal studies, boosting RBM3 protected against Alzheimer's-like brain changes. Now, yes, we're still early in translating this into humans, But the preliminary data is compelling enough that researchers at Cambridge and elsewhere are investigating this seriously. And there's more. Cold exposure activates something called brown adipose tissue, which is this special type of fat that we all have that burns calories to generate heat. Now, people with more active brown fat tend to have better metabolic health, lower body fat percentages, and improved insulin sensitivity. Now, all of these factors are associated with a longer health span, and that's the crucial period of life where you're not just alive, but actually healthy and functional. Now, the protocol doesn't need to be extreme. Starting with 30 seconds of cold water at the end of your regular shower and building up over weeks is perfectly valid, and that's exactly what I did. The key is consistency, not heroics. What you're doing is sending a repeated signal to your body that it needs to maintain robust stress response systems. And those same systems protect you from age-related decline. So we've shocked the system with cold. Now let's talk about the second practice, which actually ties directly into those circadian rhythms I mentioned earlier. And getting this wrong has consequences that compound over years and decades. Within the first hour of waking, ideally within 30 minutes, you want to get enough light exposure, preferably from natural sunlight. Now, this isn't about vitamin D, though that's a nice bonus. This is about setting your master circadian clock. And here's how it works. Your eyes contain these specialized photoreceptors called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. These aren't involved in vision. Their entire job is to detect light levels and communicate that information to the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your brain, which is essentially your body's central clock. When bright light hits these cells in the morning, particularly light with a blue wavelength component like sunlight, it sends this powerful signal throughout your entire system that says, it's daytime, act accordingly. And this triggers a cascade of effects. Cortisol, which often gets vilified but is actually essential, peaks naturally in the morning. This is called the cortisol awakening response, and it's supposed to happen. That morning cortisol surge helps you wake up. It increases your alertness and it sets the stage for the natural drop in cortisol that should occur later in the day. Without that morning light exposure, this rhythm gets muddy. Your cortisol might stay elevated for longer, or its natural peak might occur at the wrong time. Over months and years, this dysregulation is associated with increased inflammation, worse metabolic health, and higher rates of mood disorders. But here's where it gets really interesting. The timing also affects your melatonin, your sleep hormone. Getting bright light early on tells your brain to suppress melatonin production and schedule its release for later, ideally about 12 to 14 hours after that morning light exposure. So what you're doing in the morning is actually programming your sleep for that night later on. You're creating a robust sleep-wake cycle, and the quality of your sleep is one of the most powerful predictors of longevity that we have. We know that poor sleep is linked to virtually every major disease of aging: cardiovascular problems, cognitive decline, metabolic dysfunction, weakened immune responses. What the research shows is that people who've maintained strong circadian rhythms with consistent light exposure patterns have better cellular health at the most fundamental level. Your circadian clock regulates the expression of thousands of genes, including ones involved in DNA repair and cellular cleanup processes. Now, when that clock is working properly, your cells are just better at maintaining themselves, removing damaged components and resisting the accumulation of proteins that leads to age-related diseases. The practical application here is pretty straightforward. Go outside or sit by a window within 30 minutes of waking up. If it's a bright sunny day, then 5 to 10 minutes might be enough. On overcast days, you might need 20 to 30 minutes. If you live somewhere with dark winters, a 10,000 lux light therapy device positioned at eye level for 20 to 30 minutes in the day can approximate this effect, but natural light is always preferable when available. So you've exposed yourself to cold, you've gotten your light exposure, and you've set your circadian clock. Now your body is awake and ready for the day. So the question then becomes, what do you feed it? And this is where things get really interesting, because what you eat in the morning, or whether you eat at all, has become this massive debate in health circles. Some people swear by intermittent fasting, and others insist breakfast is essential. The longevity research here actually gives us a more nuanced answer, and it centers around protein. And let me explain why. So your body exists in two primary metabolic states: anabolic, where you're building tissue, and catabolic, where you're breaking things down. Now, sleep is highly catabolic. You're not eating for 8 to 12 hours, and your body is breaking down some muscle tissue to maintain blood sugar levels and provide amino acids for repair processes. When you wake up, you have a choice about what signal you send to your body. The research on protein timing shows that consuming protein in the morning, ideally within a few hours of waking up, triggers muscle protein synthesis. Now, this is particularly important as we age because we naturally lose muscle mass, a process called sarcopenia. The rate of muscle loss accelerates after 30, and by your 70s and 80s, low muscle mass is one of the strongest predictors of mortality and disability. And here's what most people don't realize. Maintaining muscle isn't about aesthetics. It's about maintaining your metabolic health, your insulin sensitivity, your ability to move and function independently as you age. Because muscle is metabolically active tissue. It's the primary site where your body stores and uses glucose. If you lose muscle mass and your metabolic health then deteriorates, what's fascinating is that studies looking at protein distribution throughout the day found that people who consume adequate protein at breakfast have better muscle mass preservation compared to those who eat the same daily total protein but skew it towards the end of the day. The theory involves your circadian clock again. It seems that your muscles are more responsive to amino acids and better at building new protein earlier in the day. This circadian component to muscle building means that when you eat protein matters, not just how much total protein you consume. The optimal amount seems to be around 25 to 35 grams of high-quality protein. Now, that might look like 3 eggs with Greek yogurt, or a protein smoothie with whey or plant-based protein powder, or even leftovers from dinner if that's what your preference is. The source matters less than the total amount of essential amino acids, particularly leucine, which is the primary trigger for muscle protein synthesis. But there's another benefit here that feeds directly into longevity. Protein at breakfast stabilizes your blood sugar for hours. When you start the day with refined carbs, your pastries, your sugary cereals, your toast and jam, your blood sugar spikes and then crashes, creating this roller coaster that affects your energy, your focus, and your hunger throughout the entire day. That blood sugar instability, repeated day after day for years, is a major contributor to insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Protein, especially when combined with some healthy fats, creates a much more stable glucose response. You get sustained energy without the crash. And here's the thing, protein is the most satisfying macronutrient. Eating adequate protein at breakfast reduces total calorie intake throughout the day because you're simply less hungry. For people trying to maintain a healthy body composition as they get older, this is huge. Obesity is linked to shortened lifespan and increased risk of pretty much every chronic disease that we know of. So anything that helps you maintain a healthy weight without constant conscious restriction is valuable. Okay, so you're cold adapted, you're light exposed, and you're protein fueled. The fourth practice involves movement, but probably not in the way that you're thinking. You don't need to do an intense workout first thing in the morning. In fact, for some people, that might not be optimal. What the longevity research supports is getting your body moving in a way that increases blood flow and activates your muscles without creating excessive stress. Think about what's happening in your body overnight. You've been relatively still for hours. Blood flow to certain areas has decreased, your lymphatic system has slowed down, and metabolic waste products have accumulated in your tissues. Getting your body moving in the morning jump-starts these systems. Even something as simple as a 10 to 15 minute walk can significantly improve your glucose regulation for the entire day. Studies on post-meal walking show improved blood sugar control, but morning walking seems to have benefits beyond just glucose. It improves your insulin sensitivity, meaning that your cells respond better to insulin throughout the day, which reduces your pancreas's workload and lowers your risk of developing diabetes. And the cardiovascular benefits are equally important. Morning movement gets your heart rate up moderately, improving blood flow to all of your organs, including your brain. And this increased cerebral blood flow is associated with better cognitive function. People who exercise regularly have lower rates of cognitive decline and dementia. While the mechanisms are complex, improved blood flow is certainly part of the story. Your brain depends on a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients, and cardiovascular health directly impacts your brain health. There's also evidence that morning exercise, or even just brisk walking, improves your mood and reduces anxiety more effectively than the same activity done later in the day. And this likely relates back to circadian biology again. Your body expects activity during the daylight hours. Moving in the morning reinforces those natural rhythms and may even optimize neurotransmitter production, particularly serotonin and dopamine, which are crucial for mood regulation. The key is finding something sustainable that elevates your heart rate moderately. A 15-minute walk at a pace where you can talk but you feel slightly breathless is sufficient. If you want to do more, then resistance training or bodyweight exercises are excellent because they maintain that muscle mass we talked about earlier. Even without formal exercise, just moving your body, whether that's stretching, light yoga, or taking the stairs, creates benefits that compound over time. What you're really doing with morning movement is reinforcing to your body that you're active, that your cardiovascular system needs to work efficiently, that your muscles need to maintain their function. These signals matter because your body is constantly adapting to the demands that you place on it. Consistent morning movement tells your body to maintain the systems necessary for health and function. Okay, now we've covered 4 powerful practices here, but there's one more piece that people often overlook, and it's actually the simplest. It involves rehydration, but not in the way most people think about it. Here's the situation. You wake up after 8 hours without water. Yes, you're not drastically dehydrated, but you are definitely in a mildly dehydrated state. Your blood is slightly more concentrated, which means your heart has to work harder to pump it, and all of your cellular processes are operating slightly less efficiently than they could be. Drinking water first thing in the morning seems obvious, right? But here's where most people miss an opportunity. The addition of electrolytes makes a significant difference, and let me explain why. Electrolytes, primarily sodium, potassium, and magnesium, are essential for your cells. Every cell in your body maintains an electrical charge across its membrane, and this charge depends on the concentration of electrolytes inside and outside of the cell. When you rehydrate with plain water, you're adding volume, but you're not optimally restoring that electrolyte balance. Adding just a small amount of quality salt, we're talking about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon in 500 ml of water, plus some potassium and magnesium if you've got it, does several good quality things. The first thing it does is it improves actual cellular hydration. The sodium helps water move into the cells rather than just passing through you. Secondly, adequate sodium intake in the morning supports that cortisol awakening response that we discussed earlier. Cortisol and aldosterone, another hormone involved in sodium regulation, work together. Having adequate sodium supports optimal cortisol function. Now, I know this goes against common health advice about reducing sodium, but that advice is primarily for people consuming excessive amounts of processed foods high in sodium and low in potassium. The ratio of sodium to potassium matters more than absolute sodium intake for most people. Adding salt to your water in the morning, especially if you're consuming a whole food diet generally lower in processed sodium, is not the same as eating potato chips or crisps all day long. The impact on blood pressure is nuanced too. Yes, while excessive sodium can raise blood pressure in some people, particularly in those who are salt sensitive, mild dehydration also raises your blood pressure. Many people are walking around in a chronically underhydrated state, and their blood pressure is higher as a result. Proper hydration with electrolytes can actually help normalize your blood pressure by improving blood volume and vascular function. And the cognitive benefits are immediate. Your brain is about 75% water, and even mild dehydration impairs cognitive function. Studies show that dehydration of just 1 to 2% of your body weight reduces your concentration it increases your fatigue and it impairs your short-term memory. Starting your day properly hydrated means your brain functions optimally from the beginning, which affects your productivity, your decision-making, and your mood throughout the day. For longevity, the connection runs through cardiovascular health and kidney function. Chronic mild dehydration stresses your kidneys and may contribute to kidney disease over time. It also makes your blood slightly more viscous, which we talked about earlier, which increases cardiovascular workload. These seem like small factors in the grand scheme of things, but over decades, maintaining optimal hydration reduces cumulative stress on these vital organ systems. The practical approach is really simple. Before you have your coffee or your breakfast, just drink a glass of water, 500 ml of water with a pinch of high-quality sea salt or Himalayan salt, and ideally some form of potassium and magnesium. You can get electrolyte powders designed for this, or you can just use salt and get potassium and magnesium from your food throughout the day. The key is making rehydration with proper electrolyte balance a non-negotiable morning habit. So let me bring this all together, because the morning routine that genuinely adds years to your life isn't about any single practice in isolation. It's about creating a sequence of behaviors that work synergistically to optimize your biology. Just think about it. Cold exposure triggers beneficial stress responses and activates longevity pathways. Light exposure sets your circadian rhythm, which regulates thousands of genes involved in health and disease. Protein intake maintains muscle mass and metabolic health. Movement improves cardiovascular and cognitive function. And then proper hydration ensures all of your cellular processes work efficiently. Each of these practices individually has research supporting its connection to longevity. But together they create a foundation that sets you up for a day of optimal function. And more importantly, when you do these things consistently, day after day, you're fundamentally changing your body's trajectory. You're maintaining systems that would otherwise decline. You're preventing the accumulation of damage that leads to age-related disease. You're extending not just your lifespan, but your health span. Those years where you're actually healthy and capable. The compound effect is what makes these powerful. Just like compound interest turns small regular investments into significant wealth over time, these small daily health practices compound into significantly better health outcomes over years and decades. You're not going to feel dramatically different after one morning of doing these things, but if you do them for months or years, then the cumulative effect on your cellular health, your organ function, your disease risk becomes substantial. What I've seen in both research and clinical practice is that people who maintain strong morning routines that align with circadian biology and include these evidence-based practices, they simply age better. They maintain their physical function longer. They preserve their cognitive abilities. They avoid or delay the chronic diseases that reduces quality of life. They remain independent and capable well into older age. And here's what I've learned about behavior change. The barrier for most people isn't knowledge, it's consistency. These practices work when they become automatic, when you don't have to think about whether you'll do them. So here's what I'd suggest. Just start with one. Maybe it's the morning light exposure because that's the easiest one. Get that dialed in for a few weeks until it becomes automatic. Then add the protein breakfast once light becomes habitual. Layer in the morning walk next. Build towards cold exposure if you're willing to be uncomfortable. And then perfect the hydration piece. Each habit reinforces the others, and over time, you'll have built a morning routine that genuinely gives you the best possible chance of a long, healthy life. Not just existing into old age, but thriving, maintaining your strength, maintaining your mind, your independence, your ability to do the things you love. That's what this is really about. That's what longevity actually means.